when I finished this book, I was mad. I was angry. I was like, why did I waste time, energy, resources, effort reading this book? Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. Today we are going to be doing the May reading wrap up, and I'm going to be telling you about the 5 books that I read this month. And let me just tell you right now, it was an interesting one. I feel like I went through a whole journey in May where I was questioning my decisions, like, why have I chosen to put myself through this? And then also, I was like, how have I not read this author sooner or this series sooner? So it was some great wins and some interesting choices, but I feel like I never learn. I always still read these books that I'm like, why am I reading them? And I still read them. But anyway, let me tell you about them now. So I'm going to start with the first book that I have just finished. So I guess the last book that I read. That was a really roundabout way of speaking. Um, but the last book that I read was actually included in my vlog, where I read for 24 hours in Disneyland Paris. If you've watched that vlog, you know I tried so hard to read every second I got whilst I was lining up for these rides. I actually read a whole book. I was only in Paris for 3 days. So considering I was so busy being on holiday, I am really proud of myself for reading this book. But it was a strategic choice because I chose a Freida Mcfadden book. I chose The Locked Door. And do you know what? Do you know what? I think this might be my favourite Freida Mcfadden book so far, which is controversial. I know people love The Housemaid by her, but honestly, I think I like this one better. I think I'm starting to understand her writing, which does mean that I guessed the ending of this book. I guessed what was going to happen, but it was still fun. I don't know if this is one of her more later books or one of her like newer books. I don't know. I think it is one of her more later books. So anyway, this book is about Nora, and she is a surgeon and her father is a serial killer. And they found that out when Nora was 11 years old. He got arrested for killing multiple women and keeping their hands literally as trophies. So pretty gruesome. If something's going to mess up a child, then that's probably it. So, as you can imagine, Nora is a bit strange. She has commitment issues and she's just not really one to socialize. She's also a surgeon, and that is really important to her. But then her patients start getting murdered, and these murders are like copycat murders of the murders her father committed when he was out way back when before he went to prison. And so the police are like, like father, like daughter, perhaps. And she's very much denying the fact that that's the case. But because this is a dual timeline, so we are seeing Nora in the past as well as an 11-year-old, and some of the very odd things she did, you just try and figure out who is committing these murders. Is it Nora? Is it someone else? And I guessed correctly, and I think I guessed because I've read 3 other Freida Mcfadden books, and if you have, you kind of start to see a pattern in the villains she writes. But I'll leave that there. I will say this was, I mean, a 3 star feels too high because honestly, this is not really 3 star worthy, but for a Freida Mcfadden book, we're going to give it a Freida 3 star, which if you're going to read a Freida Mcfadden book, then I guess I would say read this one. I guess if you really wanted to, but you're not missing out on like an amazing life-changing story. But quick, easy, kind of strange. It'll probably help you get out of a funk if you're in a funk, you know, because it's just page turning. And I just love how short her chapters are. So it was okay. It was okay. So the next book that I want to tell you guys about that I read in May was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. And I missed this. Like I missed the train on this. Where was I? What was I doing? And why was I not reading this book? Because now I get it. I get why everyone went so crazy over this book. And honestly, I loved the black love. I loved the romance. I loved so much about this book that it was just a great time. So, this book is about Eva, and she is an erotica writer and a single mum. She is looking to, just do well for her and her daughter when her ex flame childhood sweetheart comes back into her life. And we find out, because it is a dual timeline love story, that 15 years ago, I think it is, Eva and Shane had the most turbulent, magical, fiery, sudden romance imaginable as teenagers. And their shared trauma brought them together, and it was just love instantly, which is crazy because they were 15 years old or so. 15 years later, in June again, Shane is back, and they are realizing that they've been writing to each other through their books because they are both authors. And oh, there's just so much about this book that I really, really enjoyed. I really, really loved the topics of race and identity in this book. I thought those were explored really well in this. I really, really loved the discussions about trauma and healing. And honestly, there are such dark things that happen to these characters in their childhood, and you see the effects of those experiences into their adulthood and into their relationship. And yeah, I just thought it was really well written. It was funny, it was page turning, and it was different. I've not read a romance like this before, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I will be wanting to pick up some more T. William books in the future. And if you haven't read this, read it in June, because I watched someone saying they were going to read this in June because of the name, and I thought, duh, that is so clever. So it's the perfect time to read it. 7 days in June. They get two 7 days in June moments, and honestly, their romance is just it's just cute. Well, actually, cute probably isn't the word, but it's nice to read about. All right, we're back. We're back with this person. We're back with Freida Mcfadden, and I'm not even going to waste too much time talking about this book because when I finished this book, I was mad. I was angry. I was like, why did I waste time, energy, resources, effort reading this book? I don't even know if it's the worst one. It may be one of the worst ones by her. I don't know, one by one was pretty terrible as well. I don't know, but it's not great. So never lie, I gave personally a 2 star because of the ending. The beginning and the middle, they're okay. I mean, it's very cliche. It's very don't go into that haunted house, which is her favorite style of writing these books, it seems. Very cliche, very typical thriller, I guess. But the ending just drove me crazy. I was like, this is so stupid. You don't want to finish a book and think this is so stupid, right? You don't want to have that experience. But honestly, reading this, I was like, but I feel I can't even talk about this book seriously. I feel like if you are wanting something where you can just pick it up, you could probably read it in one setting and read something that's going to make you want to carry on reading, and I guess this will do it. It's just, is it worth it? No, it's not worth it. So this book is basically about this house that a therapist called Dr. Hale owned, but Dr. Hale has been murdered, and so the house is for sale. And so this girl called Trisha and her husband goes to view the house in a snowstorm. In a snowstorm, they go to view a house in the middle of nowhere in a snowstorm. Yes, they get stuck. They get stuck in this house, and so Trisha's a bit freaked out by the prospect of being in a house with a dead woman. The husband's like, oh, it's fine, we're gonna own this house one day. It's just Cliche, right? Cliche. Anyway, Trisha finds these tapes of Dr. Hale and her patients' therapy sessions, and she starts to listen to each tape. And each tape brings her closer and closer to figuring out the real murderer of Dr. Hale, who murdered her, what happened to her, and things get creepy. I mean, honestly, it sounds good, right? Like, I read the blurb thinking, ooh, this sounds so good. Trust me, genuinely trust me when I say it's not. I gave this a 2 star. I just think that it wasn't executed as well as it could have been because the idea is there, but the story isn't. It just isn't. I think anyone who read this would get through it quickly, but how you would feel afterwards, debatable. This is a forgettable book that I will not be thinking about in years to come, and I do not need to own, quite frankly. So that got a 2 star from me. We are now on to the Cruel Prince trilogy. This is the wrong one. I'm actually reading The Queen of Nothing at the moment. I'm about halfway through this, but I have finished these 2 books. So I read The Cruel Prince and I read The Wicked King. And this is the series that I was telling you guys about in the beginning of this video, where I was like, how? How has it taken me so long to read this series? I don't get it. This is one of the TikTok hyped or BookTok or YouTube, whatever. The hype is real for these books, at least for me. And I did not think that would be the case. Genuinely, when I finished Akata, I was like, right, that is such a good romantasy series. It's going to be hard to beat. And it, don't get me wrong, I still love Akata. I still think it will be a hard booked series. Like, it's a hard series to beat because it's just so memorable. But The Cruel Prince is so good. It is so different to Akata. You can't really compare the two because Akata is very romance heavy, whereas The Cruel Prince isn't that romance heavy. There is the tiniest bit of romance. And when they say enemies to lovers, the enemies is like the main part. The lovers is barely here. There's like, what love? You are literally gagging for the love because it's like, what love is in this book? It's enemies. But if you like that, you will love this book. This book is just all about the scheming, it's all about the magic system, it's all about the politics. And I did not think that was a bit of me. I would never have thought I would enjoy that, but I did. I really did. And I think because I'm listening to the audiobook, it's also adding to the magical feeling of this book, but it just feels so enchanting. Like, I really feel like I'm in a different world when I'm reading this book, and that is what makes it so much fun. So, if you haven't heard of The Cruel Prince, then essentially it's about these 3 sisters, Jude, Taryn, and Vivi. And Jude and Taryn are twin sisters and are human, and Vivi is a fae. And one day they get abducted by a fae creature who is kind of evil and basically murders their family in front of them. So a bit dark. And he ends up basically fostering the twins. Vivi is his biological daughter, and they end up having to live in the world of Fae. And this world of Fae is awful. It's not made for humans. You can't survive very well as a human, but because of who their foster dad is, they make it through. And our main character is just really hungry for power, success, and to be seen as someone that's not just a weak mortal. And so because of that, she makes some very interesting choices, especially when it comes to the prince, which is Carden, and his family. Let's just say stuff goes down. Stuff goes down with that family. That family is insane. But in the best way for a book. So good. It's really actually quite hard to summarize because this book I feel like is really setting the set or setting the scene for the next books, but it's just kind of Jude's rise from a mere weakling to someone who is going for it and trying to make herself valuable in this society that sees her as useless. And honestly, loved it. I gave this a 4-star. But then I read The Wicked King and 5-star. 5-star. This whole series will probably be a 5-star altogether, but this was so good. All of the great things about The Cruel Prince is just even better in here. We get the tiniest bit more romance in this book. Like, honestly, it's so tiny still, but it's much more than The Cruel Prince, I would say. And because it's a part of a series, I can't really tell you too much about what this book is about, but let's just say that the character development of Jude in this book and Carden in this book, even Taryn, honestly, every character nearly in this book starts to develop and change in very interesting ways, and I'm loving it. It is just so much fun. So if you do like fantasy, then I would say pick up this series if you haven't read it already. If you're new to fantasy, then I'm not sure if it's the best book for you to start with. Perhaps if you don't want too much romance, you'll like it. But if you want romance, then I probably would say Akata is maybe at least the first book. It does get a bit more war heavy. I don't know. They're both really good though, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this series. So yes. So those are all of the books that I've read in May. I am really happy with the fact that I have found a new series that I love. I honestly can't wait for all of the books that I'm going to read in June. I've got some really fun, summery, light-hearted, messy books to read in June. One of them being Magnolia Parks, which will be a buddy read as well, which I cannot wait for. And yeah, I think it's going to be really fun reading some more romance. I am still a little bit sick. I'm not sure if I mentioned in the beginning of this video, but ever since Disney, I've been like fighting a cold. I think it might have been COVID. So getting over it. So sorry if I sound a little bit sick. But anyway, I really hope that you have an amazing reading month in June. And I hope you enjoyed your month of May as well. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.